Now I have to start by explaining that adorable Danny was on a schedule. He would sit quietly in his room and play at a specific time. He woke up at an exact time, and he would fall asleep at noon on the dot for his nap, no matter where he was. He was once standing up next to a babysitter's bed and put his head down and went to sleep at precisely noon. I say this to preface the fact that once you were born, everything went nuts. Jasmine got her brother into such little scrapes. They used to run around knocking over Cheerio boxes and once they climbed the bookcases. The key to dealing with children that are on the spectrum, since they've gotten rid of the title Asperger's now and it's all spectrum related, I guess you would say both boys were on the spectrum. Danny's was a little bit more involved. In fact, he gets SSI because of how severe, I would say, his was. His was mostly the learning issues. That was his spectrum problem. And the key to overcoming a lot of that was to make sure that I was very involved, because the school districts do not want to do what they have to do with IEPs. You kind of have to be a strong advocate and teach your child to be an advocate for themselves, because otherwise they will label them wrong, they will teach them wrong, because children on the spectrum, their brains work entirely different. It never goes away, but you learn to overcome. When they diagnosed Billy with Asperger's, back when Asperger's was a label, they said he would never have a sense of humor, he would have issues with all sorts of things, he wouldn't be able to form relationships. And I'm very proud to say, doing the same thing, working with your brother and working with his IEPs and everything, is the reason that he does have a wonderful sense of humor. So I like to think the key to working with anyone on the spectrum is not treating them different, but doing that fine line where you get them the help while trying not to treat them as entirely different than regular kids. Your dad didn't want to believe anything was wrong with either of your brothers. I mean, he loves them. He loves them very much. He just didn't want to get the extra stuff. I remember when we first found out Danny wasn't going to be able to do schooling like every other kid, your dad said, well, great, now you're putting him on the short bus. And I think what he was thinking by that is that, oh no, now he's going to be labeled a problem, it's going to be a big mess. And if we hadn't done that, I don't think Danny would have gotten through school, because we had to start at the beginning and get him the help he needed so that he could catch up. And to this day, I don't think he believes that the boys have issues, despite documents we've gotten from schools and the doctors they see. But again, if you study the families that deal with people on the autism spectrum, it's not men in general, the fathers in general, don't want to jump into the whole, advocacy and reading the books and doing the IEPs and changing things around, because I don't think they want to admit that their kids have a dilemma. Adorable children, Jamie and Francis. And looking back, I wish I had gone a different way, but Francis was born with a heart defect. In layman's terms, she was born without parts of her heart. And we went the whole family, and of course Frances went through a lot with that. She had to have surgeries and everything, and she was such a wonderful child through it all. And then my second one, Jamie, she's adorable, and she always was adorable. But when I split up with their dad, because I wanted Frances to be somewhere stable, I wound up, being the visiting mom and, getting visitation time instead of being the one that had them, because James, their dad, lived with his mom and they had a stable house and everything, which I didn't at the time. And Frances did end up dying at 9, and I wish I had done things different with them. Jamie did, she of course grew up. She is 23 now and has a baby and everything. Baylin, who by the way is absolutely gorgeous, the cutest grandchild ever, but I'm just biased. But anyway, so I think it's very important to be careful the decisions you make, because they can always have far-reaching circumstances. I grew up with learning issues before they were labeled. I was the quirky kid. My parents would just kind of tap me on the head, okay, do better next time, and things of that nature. But then when my mom married my stepdad, he basically said, and I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on here, but he basically said, bullshit. She's can do this. I'm not just going to tap her on the head. And now it's hilarious because I've become my mother. And I never said I would. I've become my mom and my stepdad. I'm just as brutal about school as they were. But again, I'd like to say that my kids are doing well because of that. It's later on in life that you notice yourself accidentally becoming your parents. You don't set out to become them, but then you do. And when that happens, I think you appreciate things you didn't appreciate before. I grew up with money, and my parents were really good providers. But I think I would have liked more of a loving, warm, fuzzy environment, and I don't think I got as much of that. I think I'm easier than my parents were in certain ways, with grades and whatnot, but I am tough about working to your fullest potential. And I think I learned that from them, because had my stepdad not insisted I could do it, I wouldn't have put myself out there and learned by myself that I could do it. And that's actually, I think, what I do want to say is that I am proud of what you've all wound up doing. In this day and age where the world is full of people and unfortunately kids that solve their problems with alcohol and drugs and indiscriminate sex, it's nice to be able to say that I've raised kids that don't let all those peripheral influences affect how they behave. And they really have been truly terrific kids. Are they always perfect? Heck no. But for life experiences, I've never had the kind of problems with them that I hear that a lot of families have. So I would say my biggest gift to the world are my children, and the fact that every one of them is a good person.